In the '83 World Tournament, we went to Singapore and I was captain, and we had an extremely young side compared to the teams that had gone away previously. I think Anne and I were the only two who had played in a World Tournament before. We were totally inexperienced. We were written off before we actually left the shores of Australia. There was this team that wasn't going to perform very well.
Julie Franco was our captain. I was vice captain. Joyce Brown was our coach. I remember she gave us the best speech when that team was selected. She said she wanted to see the selected players in 10 minutes' time around the back of the marquee. So we go around the back, and by now, we don't have to, for that moment, just insulated in the successful 10 players chosen to go. We can celebrate. And she said to us, "You must be ecstatic." We're, of course, nodding and feeling more relaxed. There's nobody crying in this company. And she said, "You must feel like you've achieved the ultimate." And we're still nodding. And she said, "Dream come true. The absolute ultimate. Done." Silly girls, we nodded once too many times. And she quickly chopped our legs out and said, "Well, if that's how you feel, go back, get one of the girls not selected and bring them in. Because I don't need somebody who's reached the ultimate. I need somebody who takes the responsibility and privilege of playing for Australia and wants to do more with it, wants to achieve something beyond that, is still striving for something better." It was like being hit with a sledgehammer, but that was the nature of the woman. She's just a legend in sport, full stop. And she moulded from 10 players who were young and inexperienced at that level as a whole, and she made from them a working unit that was inseparable, that still call each other sisters to this day. It was a very grueling event. The humidity was amazing. Before we started a game, we were absolutely saturated, nowhere to wipe hands. Hair pinned up so it wouldn't touch us because it was just unbearable, the heat and the humidity.
I put in the program that they were to have an icy cold shower every morning. And because I had read somewhere in a scientific magazine that if you did such a thing and shocked your skin, then it smartened up your whole circulation system, and so you would be able to cope better with various things. And whether it worked or not physically, it worked mentally, because they felt that they were a bit of the head of the pack, because they'd put in quite a bit of torture, really. Some people don't like freezing cold showers.
We would get up at 5:30 in the morning in Singapore to use the training court when it was quiet and cool. The sun wasn't quite up. We'd stumble down. We were staying in the university accommodation, and we'd grumble and stumble down a hill. We climbed under security fencing to get in, to train and to get used to the climate. She had us doing acclimatisation in plastic bags and garbage bags before we left the country to get used to the level of humidity and sweating. So she was quite ahead of the time. She would always tell us, "Put your mind over the pain. This is for Australia. This is for something special." And whatever she did with us, it turned to gold. I think internationally we're becoming more familiar in playing that style of play. There was a lot of front-on defending. There'd be a bit of sledging in that, so we would just absorb it, make a move, get going. But I think we'd learnt by then that if we executed our skills well and we stayed on point and we kept our procedures going, that skill across the match and mental toughness would win out.
Unfortunately, in Singapore, Anne Clark did pass away. She passed away in the room below Anne Sargent and I, and it was a very moving time for the team, and we respected Anne so much that a memorial service was conducted in her honour, and the whole team attended. She was such a great stalwart, and everybody, I absolutely idolised her, and she was just great support for the team. Didn't lose a match during that championship. We came awfully close against Trinidad in the semi-final. I think we were about 5 goals down at three-quarter time, but we had some unbelievable umpiring decisions during that game, and we just managed to scrape over the line and get into the final.
It is a young team, both in age and international experience, but throughout this tournament their high level of skill, stamina and freedom from injuries has been most impressive.
It was rather telling that I looked down the corridor about 3 nights before we played New Zealand, and the coach had been given a massive bouquet of flowers from their Prime Minister, I think in lieu of their great win that was to come. And as you know, in sport, that's a very strange thing to do, because you never know which way the coin is going to flip when it really counts.
Now the teams are on the court ready, the captains have tossed, and Australia has the first centre pass.
I think we were mentally tough. In a way, we were probably a little bit scared of what we had to face. We were coming up against a New Zealand team that was touted as one of the greatest teams that New Zealand had put together. We were probably a little bit scared, worried about what was going to happen, the unknown.
Before we stepped on, there was just a link and a closeness amongst that team, and I'm including the 3 that started on the sideline. I got goosebumps thinking about the final match of 1983. I've played in a few matches. That final, Australia versus New Zealand, probably, it's like a movie to me. I think I remember most passes in the game.
And a very nice pass, right under the post for Anne Sargent.
I swear, from the first whistle in that game, I felt electricity player to player. I felt like the ball was on a string.
A very nice understanding between the 2 shooters there.
And I knew we had a lot of hard work to do and strategies to put into place, and that we had to be at our best. But I had this unwavering belief we were going to win the game. It honestly was like there was a thread connecting us. I remember watching Kay Partington and Karen Smith, knowing when they'd take an intercept.
And a nice spoil by Kay Partington.
I could see it in their eyes. Jill McIntosh at centre with Julie Franco, our captain, who played wing attack, are beautiful defensive mid-quarters, and they're just tireless workhorses, and they just turn ball over again and again, backed up by Surley at wing defence in a very understated manner. And I played goal attack with Sue Hawkins behind me, and there wasn't one move that girl put out that I didn't know she was going to do. We just knew each other inside and out and could play off each other beautifully, and I guess that's what netball's all about, timing and teamwork. One of the best pictures in sport for me is a photo of the bench during that game towards the end when they realised we were going to win. But the photo is of our manager, our Chris Burton, our umpire, the 3 players on the sideline at various levels of excitement, enthralled in the game. It's a beautiful moment to show how close that group was. And I even think that in the last few minutes, I had a moment to enjoy the playing of a World Cup final, just rejoicing in how well we'd played, how far we'd come, and that we were going to claim, the victory for Australia.
And it looks as though time is up. There's the Australians. Yes, Australia has won, and they're the world champions. Congratulations, Australia.
That was a really great win that I like to look back on with great satisfaction because of their skill and their determination.
But when we returned from that, God love them, there were a handful of players. I think Victorian Netball had organised it, forming a little, arch of honour, each holding little koalas, and a few officials, and obviously family of Victorian players, but that was it. It just wasn't known of, it wasn't respected as it should have been, it wasn't celebrated as it should have been. There were certainly no ticker tape parades. There weren't a bevy of interviews and, the next week in lockdown with the media. So that was a very sad indictment, I think, both of the media and Australian sport, and a wake-up call to us as a sport that we have to work hard on that side of things.
Because it wasn't covered extremely well back here, of course I sent a telegram to Bob Hawke and said, had he noticed that 10 of his fantastic women had won the World Championship for netball. And so, of course, we got an invite then to Canberra, and we were entertained as I felt was appropriate. And we got a very good letter from Bob Hawke and one from Minister John Brown, Minister for Sport at the time. And so if people are not watching, then every now and again from the women's sports side, they need to be nudged.
At the end of '83, we never really got the opportunity to celebrate our win, and last year we had a special reunion. I think it was 30 years on, and everybody got together, and it was great to see every single player from our team, our coach, our manager and our umpire get together and really have the first opportunity that we had to celebrate that great win.
When we played the video of
At the Matthews Basketball Centre then, battle about to be joined in the final match of the second World Tournament in the International Federation of Women's Basketball and Netball Associations. Applause for the two umpires, Miss Joyce Haynes of England and Miss Leah Robinson from Jamaica as they move into the centre.
My first World Tournament was in 1967 in Perth. Pulling on the Australian uniform was just a wonderful experience. It gave rise to an incredible range of emotion.
Australia in the light tunics, New Zealand in the dark tunics.
Certainly feelings of pride and honour and satisfaction.
Presumably Audrey Franks will give the centre pass first of all to New Zealand.
Representing at a World Championship then brought with it responsibility, because you got past the excitement and the buzz of being there, then you had to come up and deliver the goods. And that's where the nerves, the nervous excitement, if you like, kicked in, because there was a job to be done.
Finds Lynn Davey, gay switch, back to O'Shaughnessy, and there's another pass. How she picked Carol White out of that, I won't know.
It was difficult for us in '67 because we had been selected the previous 12 months previously, but we had no contact until we came together the week before the tournament. And being in Australia meant we didn't have any travelling time when we could have started to bond. So we came in with very limited preparation and had no one who'd been there on the previous winning World Tournament in '63. So we were newbies. So there was a lot of nervous anticipation.
Shaughnessy to White. Australia keep the hopes alive.
We were still wearing the box pleat in '67 and in fact in '71. It wasn't till well into the '70s that the uniform started to change into, the pleated skirt and the sports shirt, and that's when the green and gold. In fact, it was mainly gold with a little bit of green trim. That's when that appeared.
Very difficult.
And I mean, in my day, there were shooters who were 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", so it was quite uncommon to see the size that we've seen develop over the last couple of years. I mean, the 6'2", 6'4", they were non-existent in those days. We were starting to see some tall players start to emerge, not necessarily at the shooting end, but certainly in the defensive end. We started to see the longer limbs and longer arms appearing, and the poor old tracksuits never seemed to, or the poor old manufacturers never seemed to be able to make them long enough in those areas.
Australia passing it low, and another good one to Carol White. And a beautiful goal. That's 8-3 in Australia. Cramming on early, and there's the goal that's done most of it. Helped by some bullet-like low passes from wing attack and centre alike.
And certainly we struggled with New Zealand, who had retained 3 or 4 of their 1963 team.
White with Australia going down fighting. 39-33, New Zealand holding a 6-goal lead.
We struggled against New Zealand. I think we went down to them by 4 or 5, but won all the other games. But we were left with a sense of having underachieved, and competitive people don't like that sense because the fire in the belly burns. And I guess from there grew some fairly fierce determination 4 years later, because there were several of us who had been there in '67 and one who'd been at the 1963 World Tournament. So within the group in '71, we came together with a much better focus, much better idea of what we were going to face and of course, how to go about achieving what we wanted to achieve.
Queen, who scored the last goal. Eleanor Shaughnessy couldn't take the pass.
Look, I've no question. Sport teaches you an awful lot about life, about how to survive, I guess, in terms of coping with success, coping with disappointment, because they're the two sides of the coin. I don't think you can expect one without the other. And I guess it's learning to cope with disappointment, difficulty, how to fight through issues, how to persist, and how to plan for the next step, and to work your way through those challenges. I think that's a life skill that you get from sporting experience and stays with you.
There's the whistle to finish the match. And with great jubilation in the New Zealand camp, and I think appreciation from the crowd, which has enjoyed a good match, New Zealand wins 40-34.
The beauty of playing a team sport, it doesn't matter what's happened, how far apart you've been, what you've done. When you come back, that buzz is still there, the common experience that binds you just survives time.
Looks like a haka forming up in the background, and I think that it's a very elated lot of New Zealanders. The crowd will love this.